My name is Muhammad Usman, and I'll be discussing UN's work in SDGs. So first of all, we'll discuss MDGs. The Millennial Development Goals were a set of 8 global development objectives introduced by UN in 2000. These goals aim to tackle significant global challenges such as poverty, hunger, disease, and environmental degradation. With a target of achieving these goals by 2015, MDGs serve as a framework for international development efforts. Although they faced critiques and were seen as imperfect, the MDGs brought much needed attention and resources to critical global issues, leading to progress in several areas. In 2015, MDGs were succeeded by SDGs Sustainable Development Goals, which aim to build upon the achievements of MDGs and continue effort towards a fair and more sustainable world. The shift to SDGs. The year 2015 marked a pivotal moment in global cooperation with the adoption of Paris Agreement on climate change and UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The 17 SDGs, endorsed by all UN member states, aim to enhance the well-being of people, protect the planet, and promote shared prosperity. Eradicating poverty is a key focus. Recognized as essential for sustainable development and long-term prosperity. As the 2013 deadline approaches, the question arises, are we making sufficient progress or are we falling behind? At the launch of 2025 SDGs report in July, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned of a global development emergency. Citing the slow pace of progress, he emphasized that the world is not advancing quickly enough to meet the SDGs. The annual progress report from the UN highlights both successes and setbacks. While millions have benefited from improvements in health, education, and energy access, these changes have not been swift enough to meet the 2030 targets. Now, poverty and equality. Despite progress in some areas, significant gap remain in addressing poverty and inequality. As of 2025, about 60% of countries surveyed have seen improvements in income, particularly among the bottom 40% of population. However, approximately 800 million people, or nearly 7% of global population, still live in extreme poverty. With little reduction since 2015, the UN predicts that the goal of eradicating extreme poverty may not be achievable due to ongoing setbacks like the COVID-19 pandemic, economic instability, climate disasters, and slow growth in regions like sub-Saharan Africa, which remains home to the majority of the world's poorest. Now, in January 2015, the Oxfam reported that the world's 18 richest individuals own as much wealth as the poorest 3.5 billion people. And 1% rich of the global north extracted 29 million euros an hour from the global south through financial system in 2023. Over the past year, total billionaire wealth increased by $2 trillion and 204 new billionaires were created. So this is the difference between the poor and the rich. Now, hunger continues to be a major issue, affecting health of women and children. In 2023, nearly 1 in 11 people faced hunger, and over 2 billion people experienced food insecurity. Despite a record investment in agriculture exceeding $700 billion in 2023, food prices remain 3 times higher than before the pandemic. While malnutrition in children under 5 has reduced slightly, dietary diversity standards for babies and women remain unmet. Only 65% of women aged between 15 and 49 years globally met the minimum dietary diversity. And now moving back to the progress in education and digital education. So 110 million children have entered school between 2015 and 2024. And global school completion rates has risen remarkably from 84% to 88% in primary and from 53% to 59% in upper secondary education in 2024. Despite these gains, the UN reports that progress has recently slowed. as the number of out-of-school children has grown by about 3% since 2015. The education gap remains stark between rich and poor nations. In low-income countries, roughly 36% of school-age children are not attending school, compared with only 3% in high-income countries. Over half of these out-of-school children live in sub-Saharan Africa. So climate change, water, and energy progress. Since 2015, there have been notable improvement in access to water and sanitation. Access to safe drinking water have increased from 68% to 74%, while sanitation coverage has grown by 10% from 58%. And basic hygiene services have risen from 66 to 80%. Despite this advancement, 10% of the global population still experiences high or critical water stress. Now, in terms of electricity access, electrification has risen from 84% in 2015 to 91% in 2023, reflecting significant progress towards SDG 7, while 45 countries have achieved universal access to electricity. Sub-Saharan Africa continues to lag with only modest improvements from 33 to 53%. Now, there are so many SDGs that I cannot cover in this limited time, so I will just move on to the challenges. So the number one challenge that we have is the data efficiency. The IMF General Data Dissemination System emphasizes the need for at least 2 data points over a decade to provide accurate poverty estimates every 3 to 5 years. A 25 World Bank study revealed that 57 out of 155 countries had fewer than 2 data points between 2002 and 2011. So the lack of up-to-date data and reliable data makes it extremely difficult for countries to develop and implement effective policies. For example, Nigeria, which was recently named as Africa's largest economy, relied on outdated data to calculate its GDP, leading to decades of policy making based on inaccurate information. This underscores the critical need for timely and reliable data to guide development strategies. Second challenge, prioritizing SDGs. New York City's William Easterly wrote for foreign policy when the SDGs were launched in 2015. It is hard to imagine what the time-bound and quantified target is for harmony with nature. Unlike the MDGs and the SDGs are so encyclopedic that everything is top priority, which means nothing is a priority. Accountability in the SDGs. A key criticism of the SDGs is the lack of robust accountability mechanism for countries that fail to meet the targets. Since the goals are not legally binding, the United Nations has limited leverage over countries that choose not to implement them. Impact of conflicts and war. Conflicts such as the war in Gaza and ongoing Russia-Ukraine war have caused massive destruction, undermining years of development progress. In Gaza, critical infrastructure, including schools, universities, hospitals, have been obliterated. The ongoing violence has set back all 17 SDGs as efforts to rebuild or improve have been buried under the rubble of war. Thank you so much.